How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
To give you some idea.
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
is the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh, I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. This is the final scene of
James Lindsay is obsessed with lying to his audience. What crazy things can he get them to believe? He does it irresponsibly to pocket all that money from the mills for liberty. The left hates capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory destabilizes normativity, gender binary, and the nuclear family. James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him, creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. He used to believe in something. What happened? Mills for liberty. Gnostic sex cult, building his own world. A Gnostic sex cult, blinding it from reality. Totally lost it. What can we do? The mock him relentlessly. It's not a Gnostic sex cult, James. No, it's not. Stop lying to your audience. No, it's not. It's not Gnostic change. Greg Mary Nardini tells us queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism. Catch up, James. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. Whoa. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. It's capitalism. To pocket all that money from the mills for liberty. The left hates capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory destabilizes normativity, gender binary, and the nuclear family. But James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him, creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. To believe in something. Whoa. stalk him relentlessly.
Carlin gets it.
What up, guys? Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Listen, I had to play the James song. Not only because it's just a great song. Can we all just admit that that's basically the best song that's ever been written? I mean, we've written some good ones about James. We've written some good ones in general. But that really is like, that was the song that I wrote when I still didn't know what I was doing. And it just came out so perfectly. And you just can't replace that type of authenticity. You just can't. But I had to play it. Because James today just said the craziest thing. I mean, like, you know, must be a day that ends in Y, right? And so James, they're trying to drag Eliza Schaefer because Elijah correctly tweeted that communism is Jewish. What do we mean by that? Communism was literally created by almost entirely Jewish people. That's just like a statement of fact. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just saying that we should actually be able to hinge into reality and say that yes, Karl Marx was Jewish. Yes, Lenin was Jewish. Yes, Trotsky was Jewish. And the Marxists believed that Trotsky was the rightful inheritor of Lenin. We have to be able to say that yes, the vast majority of people involved in the Frankfurt School were in fact Jewish. They just were. I'm not saying good, I'm not saying bad. I am just saying that this is a statement of fact, that it was almost entirely Jewish intellectuals in the Frankfurt School that brought all this bullshit to America and set up shop at Columbia University in the 1930s. This is just fact. It is. It is. But there are some people that don't like us pointing out that very clear and obvious fact, and one of those people, of course, is James. And so here is James's retort to the idea that communism is Jewish. Communism is nakedly socio-gnostic hermeticism, which we could see as a kind of social theosophy. But if I explain this, no matter how much detail is involved, I just get made fun of by the alleged anti-communist guys who want you to believe that it is Jewish instead. And then he followed up, communism is expressly the attempt to reject God as a demonic false power, rebuild Eden on man's own terms to achieve it by fundamentally transforming man's fallen nature through awakening to hidden self-knowledge and the reunification of apparent opposites. What the fuck does that even mean? We've watched communists talk about religion. Not too long ago, actually, we watched, maybe it was like within the last couple months, right? We had a Socialism Saturday where we were watching the Denver Communists. I think it was the Denver Communists. And it might have been the Seattle Revolutionary Socialists. It was one of those two groups. They were explicitly talking about religion. And do you know what the communists said about religion? They said, we understand that a lot of people find comfort in religion and we need to work within the system, and we don't want to eradicate religion. We just believe that people are using religion as a coping mechanism to deal with capitalism, and then once we get rid of capitalism, they won't need the coping mechanism of religion anymore. We also have, actually, there is a presentation that we haven't watched from the Socialism 2024 conference. Do I have that SoundCloud up anywhere? Do I have it up? I think I do. I think I do. Hang on one second. Bing. Drag over here. Actually, you know what? Maybe I can just do this. Instead of dragging it, which it doesn't seem to want to be dragged at the moment. Why would it? We can look at the Socialism 2024 conference and look at the tracks they have up because they recently uploaded all the presentations from the 2024 conference. We were kind of listening to them here and there. And maybe I actually should have just listened to this one today because I want to show you the title of one presentation from the Socialism 2024 conference. Where is it? Where is it? Da 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 da. Here it is. Christian Zionism 101. Oh, wait, that's not exactly what I was looking for. I don't know. There is one about here, about religion in here somewhere. And maybe I can't find it right now because I just didn't think to do that. Maybe I can't find it right now. But they were actually talking about religion at the Socialism 2024 conference. They actually don't know. They do not believe that religion is inherent to capitalism. They do believe that people use religion as a coping mechanism to deal with the oppression that they experience under capitalism, but they don't want to ban religion. They've actually, and again, I have them on video saying this, they don't want to ban religion. They don't want to get rid of religion. They just don't want your religion to go against what they want. And so as long as you don't like go against their socialist agenda, you'll be able to practice whatever religion you want, because it's really not about whether or not you believe in God. It's about whether or not you're interfering with the political process. That might not be a nuance that matters to most people, but it matters to me because I care about silly things like nuance and accuracy and facts. And James Lindsay cares about making shit up, like saying communism is nakedly socio-gnostic hermeticism, which no one even understands. No one knows what that means, James. Literally no one knows what that means. I watch communism all the time. My audience watches communism all the time. We watch real communists in the real world. We listen to them for hours and hours and hours every single week. We have no fucking clue what you're talking about because you're making shit up. And this is part of the problem. And this is why we drag James whenever we can, because he deserves it for misinforming millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people. Yeah, you might have heard it on an episode of Socialism Saturday we did not too long ago, because we literally watched an entire video about this. Anyway, I just wanted to have a little fun dragging James for obvious nonsense and tomfoolery. But we actually do have important work to do here today. We are going to be watching a presentation from Haymarket Books that took place a couple weeks ago. The Socialists are very concerned about rising fascism and ethno-nationalism. Do I think the kibbutz system is communist? You know, it's funny because our friend Alex actually just sent me a documentary about the kibbutz system. I don't know enough about it to say either way. I really just don't know anything about it. And so I'm not going to make any declarations, but I am going to watch that documentary about it. And based on what I've seen, it does seem entirely possible that it could be communist. But again, I really just don't know anything about it. And so I'm going to be investigating this, and we will come up with an answer at some point, I promise. Yup, Naomi Klein is in it. Naomi Klein is one of the queen socialists because she's like a New York Times bestseller, and she goes to all their events and she keynotes all their events, and she is just like the head academic and author, and she flits around up here and talks about socialist things. She's in it. I don't really remember these other two people, so we're gonna meet them. But this was streamed live on Haymarket Books YouTube channel about 2 weeks ago. International journalist and author Rula is currently facing criminal persecution in Italy for her tweets about Prime Minister Meloni's weaponization of language from the Nazi Great Replacement conspiracy theory, as well as her tweet about something else that they consider to be fascist. As the Coalition for Women in Journalism notes, she has been a vocal critic of the neo-fascist Italian blah, 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 blah. Press freedom organizations have documented increasing risk to journalists, especially those working in Palestine, exposing war crimes, and Palestinian journalists who challenge ethno-nationalism and fascism globally. And so we are going to watch this presentation, and we're going to listening to the socialists talk about fascism and journalism and how they want to protect leftist journalists. And I think it's going to be an interesting kind of like easy show today. It's only an hour long, so this is kind of like, this is a little light day for us, and that's okay. It's okay to have a light day sometimes. Do you want to know why it's okay to have a light day? Because I spent the entire morning and into the afternoon finishing this book. And before we get into the presentation, I thought do you guys want to hear a little bit from the book? Do you guys want to hear me read a little bit from the book? So the book it's called A Brief History of Racism, and it is the first book that is being funded out of the Red Menace Collective that has actually been completed. As you guys know, I have about 4 different books in progress right now, but this one is actually done. It is not only done, it has been uploaded and submitted to Amazon. It will be available for pre-sale on Amazon in the next couple days, but the pre-sale is not going to last long because it's going to be out next week. So next week, you're going to be able to get a Kindle version of it. Next week, you're going to be able to order your paperback version of it. Check it out, I even designed a whole cover for the paperback version. Doesn't that look snazzy? This is what the paperback version is going to look like. Let me read you the back. This is called A Brief History of Racism by me. The untold story of the world's most powerful word. In the war of ideas, definitions are the most powerful weapon. For decades, one word has dictated the rules of society. It has silenced opposition, destroyed careers, and reshaped entire institutions. It has been weaponized by the powerful, manipulated by ideologues, and transformed into a tool of control. But where did it come from? Who defined it? And most importantly, who profits from this ever-changing meaning? A Brief History of Racism uncovers the shocking origins of the world's most powerful word, how it was crafted, reframed, and ultimately used to transform the modern world. From its revolutionary beginnings to its role in today's political landscape, the book rips back the curtain on the forces behind the rhetoric. This is the book they don't want you to read, which is why you must. Okay, you should go into a book cover making industry. Listen, I just know what I like. I started out my career in marketing. I know how to do design. I used to have to do all my own stuff, all my own PowerPoints. I used to build websites. I know what I have a very distinct aesthetic that has evolved over the years. And now I'm in a position where I get to, like when I was doing industrial organizational psychology, I didn't get to embrace an aesthetic like this because I was doing mindfulness training. I had to have everything be serene and nice. And it looked good. I'm very proud of the stuff that I did in my former life, but I have now been able to fully ascend to my design aesthetic, my real design aesthetic, and I'm really happy about it. But I thought, and guys, just so you know, if you want to, so within the next day or so, it's probably going to be out tomorrow morning. If you are a member of the Red Menace Collective, what that means is if you are a paying supporter, one of the people that has funded the work I'm doing to write these books, which is over at redmenacecollective.substack.com. You can also just go to redmenacecollective.com and you'll find links over here and you'll find other resources and stuff like that. But basically, the people who are the paying supporters on this Substack, you guys are the ones that fund my ability to spend time writing these books. This is a standalone Substack. It is not to be confused with carlin.substack.com. It's a completely different thing. You have to be a member on this. And tomorrow, or possibly later tonight, but definitely by tomorrow, you will be receiving a copy of the entire PDF of the book. And if you've been keeping up with the draft chapters I've been writing, the final version of the book does look a little bit different because I went back through, I rewrote a bunch of things, I made it a little bit more narrative, I made it into a story. So you have been getting previews of the content, but now we have the full edited version, so it will be slightly different. In some cases, significantly different. In some cases, slightly different than the version that you've already read on there. The cool thing about the Red Menace Collective is you get access to my draft chapters as I'm writing them. So you really kind of get to see the whole thing come together. And then when you get to see the final version, you really get to see how all this stuff comes together. It's been a really cool process to work through. I feel like this is the first big one, and the first one is like the hardest. And now I know how to do all the stuff. I know how to design the covers. I know how to do the self-publishing stuff. And let me tell you, publishing is such a scam. I've had 2 books published with quote-unquote real book publishers. I am so angry at myself for not doing self-publishing earlier, mostly because I had to wait 12 to 18 months from the time I submitted a manuscript till the time the book actually got published. I don't know what they were doing with all that extra time because it doesn't take that long. It took me several hours today to set it up on Amazon because I had to finagle with stuff and mess around and figure it out. But it really wasn't that hard. It really wasn't that hard. And so, F you to all the book publishers who made me wait months and months and months, over a year, to actually publish my books. I'm doing it on my own, and that way I can get it out quicker. And F traditional book publishing, this is much better. And I really do appreciate everyone who supports my work on the Red Menace Collective to be able to do this sort of thing. So I thought we could do two things before we get into our video. I thought I could read you the introduction to A Brief History of Racism, and then I thought I could read you the epilogue that I literally just wrote last night. And that's the cool thing again about self-publishing, because I get to make changes up until the very end before I decide to go and live with it. So, do you guys want to hear the introduction and the epilogue? It will be available on Amazon very, very soon for pre-order. It will be coming out officially next week. It'll be available on Amazon in the next couple days. But if you want it right now, you can just go over to Red Menace Collective, redmenacecollective.substack.com, sign up as a supporter over there, and you'll be getting a PDF of it within the next 12 hours, probably 24 hours max. So that would probably be a better option if you want that. Anyway, let's do the introduction. Let's do it. And this is the first, you guys have got to be gentle with me. This is the first time I've ever actually read it out loud. So I hope you like it. Here we go. Let me make this a little bit bigger so people can actually see it. Introduction. The Revolutionary History of Racism. In the war of ideas, definitions are the most powerful weapon. He who controls the definition controls the culture. No word in modern discourse exemplifies this more than racism. This book traces the revolutionary history of the term from its inception to its current role as a cornerstone of left-wing ideology. What you're about to read isn't just a history. It's an expose of how communist intellectuals deliberately crafted and wielded this term as a tool for social transformation. This isn't just about tracking linguistic changes. It's about understanding how definitions shape reality. By controlling the definition of racism, leftist intellectuals have fundamentally altered how racial issues are discussed and addressed in Western society. The term racism has never simply meant individual prejudice. For almost its entire existence, it has referenced an oppressive system, not just the personal biases of those who view others as inferior based on skin color. More importantly, it has been weaponized, used to gaslight, silence, and destroy those deemed inconvenient to a far-left agenda. This book names the race of every individual who influenced the definition of racism. Why? 2 reasons. First, because it's a fact. I'm tired of being told I can't state objective reality to coddle the fragile sensibilities of those who find facts offensive. If race is real, and not just a social construct created by capitalism as the left insists, then stating a person's race shouldn't be controversial. It's time to force society to hinge back into reality, and that starts with acknowledging that facts and fantasies are not the same thing. Second, because it forces a question. Does race matter? If it does, then we should be able to state it openly. If it doesn't, then acknowledging it shouldn't be an issue. I'm not telling you the answer, I'm just raising the question. After all, the left has spent the last century insisting that racism, by their definition, is the greatest evil imaginable, that those who engage in it must be censored and banned. Yet they also claim to be the true anti-racists. So which is it? Does race matter or doesn't it? I leave that to you. Some readers may find the history in this book uncomfortable, as if history exists to cater to our comfort. Maybe you should demand the past file an environmental impact statement or insist that time itself provide trigger warnings. Better yet, perhaps you should force historical facts to undergo sensitivity training before they're allowed to disturb your curated worldviews. Reality doesn't care about your feelings. What matters is not how history makes us feel, but what it reveals about the present, and few revelations are more urgent than understanding how a single word reshaped Western civilization. In the pages ahead, you'll find out how one word became a revolutionary tool, how its definition was expanded and manipulated to serve ideological ends, and how it continues to shape society today. This is the story of how the left weaponized a word and how that word changed the world. So that's the introduction to the book, guys. What did you think? Give me some feedback. I would love to hear it. The book is a relatively short book. It is about 20,000 words. So it did come out to about 169 pages, but you can see I've got like the font is like really nicely spaced and stuff like that because I want people to be able to write notes and margins and things like that. So that is the introduction of the book. And now let's scroll down to the epilogue, and you don't get any of the good stuff. You got to buy the book for that. But I decided to add this at the very end, and people in my community know, I like after Sunday and after Kanye West's stunt in the Super Bowl on Sunday, I was hemming and hawing about this because Kanye West's stunt in the Super Bowl does feel like a cultural moment to me. And so, but I wanted to make sure it tied back into the book. I didn't just want to insert something on the end saying, hey, this crazy thing happened. But I do think that what Kanye West in the Super Bowl, what he did with that was he was making a larger cultural commentary about what was going on. And so I think I found a balance to be able to add the epilogue in. And so I literally wrote this last night. And so this is the first time I'm sharing this with anyone. I'm a little nervous, but you guys we'll see. Okay, so here's the epilogue for the book. Epilogue. The Super Bowl swastika shirt. In an era where outrage fuels profits, where the currency of cultural warfare is controversy, and where the very definition of racism has been weaponized, it was only a matter of time before someone took the entire game and flipped it on its head. Enter Ye, the artist formerly known as Kanye West, the undisputed master of media manipulation, who executed what may go down as the most audacious troll in history, hijacking the Super Bowl in 2025 by selling a swastika t-shirt. For decades, the far left has redefined and expanded the boundaries of racism to include systemic power, implicit bias, and even silence as complicity. The entire framework of modern racial discourse, as outlined in this book, has been carefully crafted to control language, dictate public morality, and punish ideological dissent. Ye understood this better than anyone. And so what he did, he did what only he can do. He exposed the absurdity of it all by forcing the conversation to its logical breaking point. Ye purchased a 30-second Super Bowl ad, reportedly spending $7 million, and filmed it in the most unpolished way possible, on his iPhone while sitting in a dentist chair. In the ad, he simply told viewers to visit Yeezy.com. Upon arrival, visitors found all the merchandise had been removed from the site, except for a single item. A plain white t-shirt with a giant black swastika. The marketing stunt, devoid of flashy production or grand messaging, relied purely on the shock factor and cultural discourse to drive engagement, ensuring that his actions dominated social media conversations during one of the most watched events of the year. The reactions were predictable. Media outlets declared the move a new low. Activist group called for boycotts. Social media melted down. Shopify even canceled his store, removing it entirely from the internet. And yet, through the hysteria, one undeniable truth emerged. Ye had seized the most watched event in America and forced the world to reckon with its own manufactured contradictions. The irony, of course, was that those who spent decades arguing about racism was just about systems, power, and oppression, not just symbols or individual acts, suddenly reverted to their most simplistic emotional definitions when confronted with the ultimate cultural provocation. The very people who defended hammer and sickle paraphernalia as historical and nuanced were now faced with an inversion of their own logic, one they were ill-equipped to handle. Even more telling was the outrage from the conservative Zionist right, a faction that had long decried cancel culture, now actively engaging in it. The same voices that once championed free expression as the antidote to the chaos caused by the left in the preceding years were suddenly leading the charge for deplatforming, proving that the only principle most people truly uphold is self-preservation from cancellation. This wasn't just about Ye. It was about the landscape he operated in, a landscape meticulously shaped by the less ideological architects, from Trotsky's original linguistic weaponization of racism to the modern anti-racism's industry that profits from perpetual outrage. In the end, Ye's Super Bowl stunt was a reflection of everything this book has dissected: the monetization of identity politics, the selective application of outrage, and the sheer performative nature of what passes for activism today. The ultimate question remains: did Ye do this as a critique, or simply because he could? Either way, the response was the real revolution. The empire of race-based morality trembled, if only for a moment, revealing its own fragility. And in that moment, one truth became clear: nothing is sacred when everything is for sale. Racism has evolved over time, a tool, a weapon, and ultimately a product. But its trajectory remains subject to the forces that shape the broader cultural landscape. And if Ye proved anything, it's that in the end, the only thing that truly matters is who controls the narrative. So that's the epilogue. What do you guys think? So, I hope people enjoy this book. I really did have a good time writing it. I really learned a lot in writing it. And I really think that some people are going to be very, very surprised at I was surprised at some of the information I uncovered. And so the book is going to be available to Red Menace Collective members by tomorrow. You'll receive an email with a PDF, that the very PDF that I was just reading from. And then starting next week, fingers crossed on Tuesday, it's scheduled for Tuesday, the book will be available on Amazon as a paperback. It will also be available as a digital copy. You're going to be able to get your pre-orders in the next couple days. I didn't want to do a long pre-order period just because I just want the book out there. I want it done. And so that is going to be coming too. But if you want the book ASAP, well, it will get published because I'm publishing it. So it will indeed get published. So if you want the book ASAP, head over to redmenacecollective.substack.com, sign up as a member. This is $10 a month, $100 a year, and you guys are funding the books that I'm working on. We're going to go back to the re-education book next, which I should have been working on, but I took a little detour to do this, and I'm glad that I did. Honestly, it's all part of the creative process. And so if you want the PDF of the book coming out soon, head over there, sign up, and then everyone else can pre-order on Amazon, and that's going to be the way it goes. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. And now let's get into the show. And can everyone just make sure you've mounted the like button for me? YouTube, excuse me, YouTube has changed its algorithm. There's something going on with the YouTube algorithm. It is, again, shadow banning my channel. It's not sending out notifications. It's doing all the stuff it normally does. So can we just take a minute for everyone to mount the like button on YouTube? Can you guys just do that for me as we set up to get into our show? As we're doing that, shout out to people on Rumble. I do have the Rumble chat pulled up so I can see what you guys are chatting over on there. Let's see. Let's get the numbers up. Come on. Everyone mount the like button for me. Come on. It's so frustrating. YouTube is so frustrating. Because it's like, I have 100,000 people subscribed to my channel. YouTube unsubscribes hundreds of people a day. And I'm sorry, like, I don't buy into this idea that hundreds of people a day are unsubscribing from my channel, because quite frankly, my videos aren't even being served to that many people because YouTube sucks so badly. So, and I hear from people all the time, Carlin, I was unsubscribed from your channel. And I'm like, yeah, well, what do you want me to do about it? Can't do it. I have no control over this. Make sure you're showing up for the streams. Make sure you are liking the videos. We have to go through this little process every couple of months, don't we? Where it's like, I have to remind people, hey, if you don't click on the videos, you're not going to be served the videos. Hey, if you don't watch a video, you're going to be unsubscribed from the channel. Hey, if you aren't mounting the like button, then you probably aren't going to see the videos. It's like, it sucks, but it is the way it goes. Yeah, Sam was unsubscribed in the middle of a stream last year. So it is what it is. We have to deal with it. Well, that doesn't really help me at all, if I'm really honest about it. I prefer people don't watch on X. I prefer people watch on YouTube. And so I understand that people have their personal fifis about this, but it is significantly better for me if you come over to YouTube and participate over here. So I don't actually like it when people watch on X because I don't get a lot of participation over there. Obviously, they don't have super chats, so you can't support the work I'm doing, so you're basically stealing my shit for free. So, if I had to say, you would suck it up, put on the big boy pants, and come over to YouTube and participate here. That's just me. That is just me. All right, well, I guess that's as good as it's going to get. So, let's jump into our show. We are watching Protecting Journalism from Rising Fascist and ethno-nationalist threats. And so this is from Haymarket Books, the largest socialist book publisher in the United States. Let's get this party started. Come on. Oh.
Good afternoon, all, and welcome to this Haymarket event. We are going to be joined by two fantastic journalists whom I'll introduce momentarily. I'm Nermeen Sheikh, co-host at Democracy Now! We will be discussing, our event is titled Protecting Journalism Against Rising Fascist and Ethno-Nationalist Threats. And I'm very happy to be in conversation with Roula Jabril, who is an award-winning international journalist. She serves on the G7 Gender-Based Violence Advisory Council and is currently a visiting professor at the University of Miami, where she teaches communications. Her course title is Propaganda and Genocides. And also with us is Naomi Klein, award-winning journalist, a New York Times bestselling author, and a columnist at The Guardian. She's also co-director of the Center for Climate Justice at the University of British Columbia in Canada. Her newest book is a New York Times bestseller, Doppelganger, A Trip into the Mirror World, now out in paperback. And if you'd like to see our extensive interview with Naomi Klein, please go to democracynow.org. So Roula, let's just begin with you. You've had a recent repeated experience of the Meloni government in Italy attacking you for criticisms that you've made of her administration. Explain what happened and also why your own relationship to Italy. You live here in the United States.
Thank you, Narmeen, and thank you, Naomi. Let me start by saying I believe there's a war on journalism and on journalists.
Oh, I hope there is a war on journalists. Hey, thanks, Annie. I do appreciate it.
And this war is a global war everywhere. We can see a version of this war that is a Cold War in Europe, and I'll explain my case. But there's the hot war, and that is taking place in Gaza, where 205 journalists were slaughtered, where journalists are being targeted as they wear, press vests, where journalists actually are being picked one by one simply for doing their job, which is telling the truth, documenting the most horrific genocidal campaign that is live streamed. And I think, my experience with this government, the far-right government, the neo-fascist government in Italy, is nothing compared to what Palestinian journalists are witnessing. I am myself ethnically Palestinian. I'm a Palestinian citizen, Israeli Palestinian, but also I'm Italian. I arrived to Italy when I was 17 the first time. I became an Italian citizen. I was the first journalist who came from the Middle East and was naturalized and became a TV host. And I wrote extensively and worked extensively in Italy. And my relationship with Prime Minister Meloni basically goes back to the first debate. And we debated neo-fascism in 2016 when Donald Trump won the elections. She was very upset. She didn't like the facts. She didn't like that I called her party out because of their roots with Mussolini, and calling her out personally on her statement that Mussolini was a great man, despite the crimes that he committed. The racist law, the racial laws, the massacres, the deportation of Jews. And I remember vividly how she brought with her a bunch of people and she kept turning towards them and saying, oh, what is she saying? What is she saying? She's crazy. So she couldn't handle the debate. I remember she rushed out of the studio almost screaming. She was very upset that anybody challenged her and challenged her views and her racism and her xenophobia, and especially something specific to me was her constant use of the neo-Nazi conspiracy theory, the Great Replacement one. She did not like that. She hated that. And my connection of that conspiracy theory to its origin, that it's a neo-Nazi one, was used in Europe extensively against the Jews. Like all autocrats, she does not like to be called out. So the day after she was elected, I found out, like many colleagues in the media, that her own father was a drug trafficker who was convicted in Spain and convicted for 9 years. She called immigrants, drug traffickers, rapists, etc. So I basically reported the news on a tweet saying what happened, and also explained to her that when you criminalize in a democracy, you don't criminalize collectively a group of people, because that is bigotry and racism. In a democracy, you are individually responsible for your acts. Her father, she's not responsible for what her father did, but she claims that people like myself and others who are Italian citizens or even immigrants or others, all of us are somehow criminals. And immediately she went on Twitter and said she was going to sue me. And she did. And obviously, immediately after, her vice prime minister, Salvini, sued me for another tweet. And the president of the parliament sued me for another tweet, simply because I kept pointing out to the fact that of their direct connection to the neo-Nazi and neo-fascist groups in Italy. Luckily, one of the lawsuits, the judge dismissed it. I still have 2 to go. But again, I just want to say that this is not my unique experience. I was the first one, but she's suing tons of people in Italy, critics, authors, historians, anybody that dares to criticize her and hold her accountable. And to end this.
Okay, I will say for me, and I obviously don't know the details of all of this case, but I will say for me, whether or not I agree with this journalist or not, I don't personally like the precedent of politicians suing journalists over tweets they don't like. I don't personally like that. I think that's a real slippery slope. It's kind of like, just answer the charge. Like, make a statement, answer the charge. And I mean, I'm sure that this leftist journalist was like exaggerating things and twisting things. They do this all the time. But it just to me seems like a really dangerous road to go down, to start suing people every single time they tweet something you don't like. I don't know. I feel like that could be used against us, and I don't like it.
This part, yesterday we found out that she's the prime minister.
Like, if the journalists are lying, then use it as an opportunity to expose them as liars. Like, do a whole campaign. Like, here's how this journalist is lying. Go on all the TV shows. Talk about how the journalist is lying. Like, show people how fake the news actually is. Do that. I think that's far more productive than lawsuits.
Italy is under criminal investigation. Why? Because last week there was an arrest warrant by the ICC, the International Criminal Court, against a human trafficker. His name is Al-Masri. He is he's a militia lord in Libya who tortured people, killed people, raped children that were 5-year-old children. All of this with hardcore evidence was presented to the ICC. They issued an arrest warrant. He happened to be in Italy. What Meloni did, the woman who promised that she would fight drug traffickers and human traffickers, she put him on a state flight, meaning a private jet used by ministers and prime minister, and sent him back to Libya in defiance, in violation of Italy's obligation to arrest a war criminal. That's the situation in Italy.
So, Rula, can you say, I mean, how are people within Italy responding? You've said that, there have also been lawsuits against government critics there. So number one, how are journalists and critics responding in Italy, adapting to this new environment? She's been in power for just over 2 years. And then, talk about this kind of, the creation of fear and silencing in the context, which is now the context with which you began, which is Gaza, not just in Italy, but also elsewhere in Western Europe. And then, I'll ask Naomi as well to put it in a broader context.
I am so proud of the Palestinian journalists who are reporting about this war in Gaza, despite the personal, price. They've been maimed, killed, slaughtered, their families. I met Wael Dahdouh, who's the, Al Jazeera correspondent in Qatar a month ago. And I remember I could not, when he was explaining to me how they bombed his family, picked up, his home, his children, grandchild, who was Adam, who was 12 months old, butchered, and then his son Hamza and others. Yet he decided after the funeral, immediately after, to go on air and report. I am in awe of their steadfastness, commitment to journalism and to telling the truth. And I wish I could say the same by my Italian colleagues. Some of them, yes, held the line and continue to report, but the overwhelming majority capitulated and were intimidated into submission. And I say this with sadness because I've seen people who, you don't live in a war zone, they don't live under the bombs, yet they were truly bullied into submission. She made an example of 1 or 2 or 3 journalists taking us to court, trying to bankrupt us and intimidate us. Because you know what happened, Nermeen? It's not only that she's suing us, she's making it public. So all of her fascist followers start sending us, and me personally, horrific death threats and rape threats. I mean, I've been reporting in war zones. I reported about MBS.
Hang on. I want to say something about this. Now listen, do I 100% believe her claim? I'm sure she's getting some nasty stuff. I am. I live in the world too, okay? I'm sure she is getting some nasty stuff. Do I think it's as bad as she's saying? Well, probably not. Probably a little exaggeration going on. But what I will say is, don't do that shit. It doesn't look good for our side. For people to be, I don't even believe, I can't believe I actually have to say this. It doesn't look good for our side to be sending rape and death threats to people. It doesn't look good for our side to be sending people nasty messages. It can always be used against us. Listen, if I made a comment on Twitter earlier today about wanting to punch annoying women. Now, would I ever actually punch an annoying woman? No, not in real life. I don't believe in violence. I don't believe in that. Unless it's consensual and it's like a charity boxing match or something, yeah, I would probably do that. But if it's not consensual, I'm not actually going to enact violence. But has that already been used against me on Twitter? Look, she's a psycho. She's violent. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, of course it has. Of course it has. And so you always have to assume that everything is going to be used against you. Don't do that shit. I don't care how good it feels. Just rein it the fuck in. Well, you seem to be missing the point right now. And no, that is not the only journalist that has ever been beaten up. That is just provably false. Okay?
And about Assad, I never got the same rape and death threats that I got when I faced Meloni. And it says something about what happens when these autocrats target publicly a journalist. And for a while, I couldn't go to Italy because I knew I needed police protection. And I am privileged enough to live outside of Italy. Yet, the police showed up at my daughter's house. I don't live in Italy for a long time.
Milo, did I say that? Don't put words in my mouth. Don't ever do that. Do not twist things that you know are not the point that I'm making. You've been around long enough to know the difference between that and what I just said. And listen, I'm going to be very, very clear. I have my words twisted enough on the internet. I do not appreciate my words being twisted by my own audience, especially someone who has a wrench on my channel.
The authorities know exactly what they're doing. Yet they showed up at my former mother-in-law and daughter's house asking where I was.
Oh yeah?
They knew where
Enjoy
I
your
was
time
because
out.
the court, actually,
Goodbye.
the court case was sent to me to my home address in Italy. They knew where I was, but these kind of intimidation tactics are meant basically to put fear in you, to paralyze you with fear, so you would succumb to that kind of bullying. It's not a coincidence that Mussolini targeted journalists and opposition leaders and killed them and tortured them. This is a different kind. This is a character assassination, right? Try to intimidate you. If they can, try to bully you. If they can, try to tarnish your reputation and image, but then censor you. I mean, and Meloni didn't start today with that. Meloni started actually in 2020 when she was an opposition leader. She went on air on multiple occasions to demand that I would not be invited as a guest to a public television. And I was stunned. I was like, I'm nobody. I don't even live in Italy. I appear sometimes. Why would she want to target me personally? And then I realized she was trying to use me as an example. See what happened when you go against me. See what we do. We're willing to campaign against you, incite against you, rally against you, and take you to court. She's weaponizing defamation law to silence the media.
No.
And it was
No, Milo. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. Stop making shit up right now. What I said is don't make violent fucking threats. What I said is don't DM people telling them that you are going to kill them. Do not DM people saying that you're going to rape them. That is not the same thing as protected speech. You're smart enough to know the difference. I'm really pissed off we even have to have this conversation right now. You have a wrench on my channel. I expect more from you. Do not twist my words. Do not make shit up. And you damn well know the difference between violent threats and free speech, and don't pretend that you fucking don't. I have a super chat over from Marks Lives on Rumble. Thank you. As long as the left obsesses over Nazis, Israel will win. It is playing into the Zionist dialect, and Israel is better at it. The left will never question how Semites and Zionism subvert the worker. Well, I don't know why you're talking about the left, because the left is not the side that's currently obsessing over Nazis. The right is the side that's obsessing over Nazis. Now, conservatives aren't going to want to hear that, but that's the truth. Do we still hear the left kind of call people Nazis? Yeah, of course we do. But right now, most of the people calling someone else a Nazi are on the right. They're not on the left. They're on the right.
It's shocking to see the Atlantic Council, the liberal organization, giving her an award this year as, basically as a leader. And she managed to do this in a way where her image internationally is legitimized because her support for Ukraine.
No.
Yet at home.
Milo, I am like one step away from taking your wrench away because you're still Actually, you know what, Milo? Your wrench is gone. Remove as moderator. The reason I'm doing this is because you are, again, willfully not getting it. I didn't say actual violence. Of course, actual violence is bad. What I said was threatening actual violence. What you are saying, yeah, I would never want to kill anyone. Yeah, that's a bad idea. What I am talking about explicitly is threatening violence. So you can earn your wrench back by proving that you're not going to twist my words to suit whatever fucking agenda you've got going on in your head right now. I don't really care what it is, but this is not what I said. I said, do not fucking make violent fucking threats. Don't even know why we're having this conversation. It eludes me.
She was cracking down and basically using autocrats tools that I seen very well in Egypt with Sisi, I seen in other under dictatorship in the Middle East. It's the same exact tactic. She's no different than these people. She has a little.
Do I need to end the stream? Like, is this what we're doing today? Is it purposefully Carlin's own audience twisting her words today? Do I have to end the fucking stream? Because I will. No one ever okay. No one ever said, make sure I'm happy with everything you said. What I said is, do not make violent fucking threats. Do people want me to end the stream or do people want it to continue? Because if my words are going to be twisted by my own audience, there's no reason for me to be here. I'll go do something else. What do you want?
Check on her power because she still lives in a Western democracy, but she's no different than any of those autocrats.
And so, Rula, say how this applies in particular to any kind of, reporting that's even vaguely accurate about the situation in Gaza over the last year and a half.
Look, I mean, we've seen the extreme version of this war in Gaza, where journalists were targeted. I mean, I remember very well the case of Ismail al-Ghul, a reporter from Al Jazeera who was basically in his car July 31st with another colleague. They bombed him. They saw the signs, they bombed him. And then Israel claimed that he was a terrorist. And then they put out a statement saying, we know that Ismail al-Ghul was part of the October 7 attack. We have evidence. And they put outside a report that I read actually in Hebrew, and I was like, wait 1 second. The report says that he was a militant since 2007. Well, Ismail al-Ghul was 10 years old in 2007, was 10 years old. So even the evidence that they put forth don't withstand, like when you fact check them, you can see that are lies. But, every time they would kill a journalist in Gaza, they would dismiss it as Hamas without providing evidence. Yet,
hang on, guardianship over on Rumble. Thanks for the Rumble rant. In the U.S., we don't sue. Let rocket scientist Elon get angry on lying journalists and corrupt politicians. Go investigate plus and defund, terminate lying journalists and their entire platform. I generally agree with that. Thank you, guardianship.
You can see German newspapers and Italian newspapers and others putting headlines. Israel killed 5 members of Hamas in Gaza. That attack was against 5 journalists. They were not 5 members of Hamas. So you see also not only a war on journalists in Gaza, but the complicity of that war by some people in mainstream media, especially in Germany, especially in Italy. Maybe in the United States, they have a little bit, attempt. It was like, 5 journalists died. They wouldn't say killed. They wouldn't say who killed them. They call them dead, as if they died from a heart attack or, I don't know, hot flash or something. So you could see how that kind of war, there's a war within a war to try to dehumanize and delegitimize and basically blame the victim for their own killing. Without journalists in Gaza, because Israel barred international media from covering Gaza, we would not have eyes on the grounds. We would not have our eyes and ears on the grounds. We would not have discovered Hind Rajab, who was killed exactly a year ago, 6-year-old, in her car together with her family. They shot at her 335 bullets. We could not have all of these, incredible amount of evidence. So when I talk about Gaza and the journalists in Palestine, and I mean, it's not only Gaza now. We could see how Israel treats journalists by looking at Shireen Abu Akleh. They shot in the head, direct shot in the head. She was wearing the helmet. She was wearing the press vest. The press vest for Palestinian journalists makes you a target. Makes you a target. So she was shot. They denied. They claimed that they were shooting. Even after the investigated, media organization investigated and found out that Israel committed, they apologized, said it was a mistake. I don't know how can it be a mistake when a sniper shoots you. And usually the Israeli snipers don't move around alone. They're always in 2. One is the one that looks, the other one is the one that directs the shot, and they have to actually receive orders. So if you look at the targeting of the media in Palestine, you have a long history of targeting international journalists in Palestine, but also especially Palestinian journalists. As we speak, hundreds of those are sitting in dungeons, being tortured in Israel. So it is, I look at what happened to me and I think it's nothing truly. And I wonder why our colleagues, especially in Western media, who have nothing to lose, did not voice did not voice their concern or defend their colleagues, or at least the principle of the right to, not to have journalists targeted, and to say that journalism is not a crime, not only in Ukraine, but also in Palestine. And I believe, Narmeen and Naomi, that this will not stop in Palestine. This will be used as a precedent against other journalists elsewhere.
Hang on. See the title she's sitting in front of? Well, it says Crossfire Hurricane, doesn't it? It's probably why she's sitting in front of it.
So Naomi, if you could comment on what Rula has said, and in particular, the point I think which you should elaborate on, the connection between the murder of journalists in Gaza and the stifling of any kind of solidarity here in the US, or in fact, the criminalization of solidarity here in the US, which we are going to see now accentuated and intensified with Trump in power. Naomi.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been following Rula's cases in Italy very closely, because I do believe that it is an incredibly dangerous precedent and the kind of thing that is going to migrate. And I think it's worth underlining that, in North America there, and, in other parts of Europe, there is more of a taboo, and we should recognize that it is just a taboo against public officials suing journalists in this way, right? There's sort of this idea, well, you went into the public eye and you sort of have to take what comes, right? But we've started to see that change with billionaires like Peter Thiel using the courts to shut down critical journalism. And now we have this merger of the billionaires and the politicians in the form of Trump. And, I think that whatever that deal was, all bets are off. The message is being sent that Elon Musk is willing to sue people who describe what they see with their eyes, right? And that is, of course, intimately connected to what Rula is describing around this kind of pincer move, this strategy where there is, as Rula said, like a hot war against journalists in Gaza and in the West Bank. But that's related to this Cold War, this chill, where journalists are terrified of being called anti-Semitic, of the whole machine of smearing that comes down if journalists here describe what they see with their eyes, which is ethnic cleansing, which is genocide, which is apartheid. All these words.
I don't know what you exactly mean by that. EPA will defund journalist channels like Political. You guys understand there are a lot more journalists than just the ones that are involved in those scandals, right? Please tell me you get that. Please tell me you get that. Please tell me you get that. Please tell me everyone understands that just because USAID got exposed, that is not actually going to solve the problem. Please tell me you guys understand that. Okay. Thank you, Suzanne.
Words, right, become monsterized. These are words with meaning under international law, but the vast majority of high-profile journalists in North America, in Europe, are absolutely terrified to use them, right, or even to describe the pattern of killing journalists, right? Not that they happen to die, but that this is a strategy of killing.
Yeah, but do you consider it a win when you have a cold and you take cough syrup? This is a yes or no question. Do you consider it a win when you have a cold and you take cough syrup and you're like, well, you know what? It's a start. It's like, yeah, I mean, taking cough syrup is a good thing. It's going to prevent you from coughing. It may stop your nose from running for a couple hours, but it's not something that we should be celebrating and high-fiving over. And that's effectively what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. You're cheering on the taking of the cough syrup. It's just on a bigger scale, so you think it's more than taking cough syrup, but it's really not. It's just taking cough syrup. It's not actually going to fix the problem. We've treated one of the symptoms of the problem. We have not treated the cause of the problem. The problem is still there. And in this particular case, it's not going to go away just because you took some cough syrup. And if people think I'm just being too persnickety about this, well, this is why the left wins and the right loses, because the left thinks like I'm telling you, and the right thinks like, oh, I just took some cough syrup and therefore I'm winning. Like, no, you're not winning. You just took some cough syrup. The cough syrup is good. Don't get it twisted. Like, yeah, good first step, okay, but we're not going to kick up our feet now and go relax, are we?
Witnesses of attacking their colleagues. So that hot war is intimately connected to this Cold War of what will happen to my job. Will I be demoted? Will I be fired? Will people think that I'm an anti-Semite? So people do the work of self-censorship, right? So I think the war that we're describing, yes, it's a war on journalists, but it's broader than that. It's a war on truth. It's a war on witnessing. And it extends to the academy, it extends to nonprofits, it extends to foundations, right? So if we look at what Trump just did with this obviously illegal executive order to freeze appropriations, money that had already been appropriated by Congress, that was duly elected, and now they're freezing that money. They know that this isn't going to stand, but it's spreading chaos. But what does the chaos look like on the ground? Okay, on the ground, it looks like universities, NGOs, hospitals, foundations going, okay, is this, like, the executive order makes no sense. People are not waking up in the morning saying, I'm going to do gender ideology this morning, like it says that anybody who has a program that involved in gender ideology or DEI or the Green New Deal, the Green New Deal is not a policy, right? So nobody is doing that. Nobody, like we didn't win that fight, right? So what it means is that people are asking themselves, okay, is this climate policy something that they could see as Green New Deal? Is this justice policy something that they could see as DEI? Is this equity policy something that they could see as gender ideology? So you start to do their work for them, right? You censor yourself on all of these issues. And this is where I think Israel's playbook is now being generalized to all these other issues. And many of us have said, progressive accept Palestine is the wedge which is going to be used to go after the entire progressive architecture, right? And now we're seeing that in action. So yeah, so there's a lot there, but I think we need to pay very close attention, and we need to not capitulate, right? Because they don't have a basis for this. It is illegal. What they're counting on is fear, right? Who wants to go to court with the richest man in the world, right? With people with limitless resources. It's about tying people up, right? It's about wasting precious time. Like, really, I mean, how much time have you had to spend that you could have been doing fantastic journalism and writing, instead being tied up in these court cases? And that's why it's important to talk about the court cases themselves and the strategy that it represents, right? This is part of our job as journalism, to describe this strategy and to report on it.
And Naomi, I do want to say those are excellent points. And the thing that's so ominous is the fact that there has been an accelerating, increasing silencing, what Pankaj Mishra calls in his forthcoming book, a kind of intellectual despotism on the question of Gaza in a range of institutions, educational institutions, the media, and so on. But there is something.
One thing I would say, in addition to that, Nermeen, is I think what we have seen over these past horrific 16 months is practice for capitulation. Because all of these institutions, all of these liberal institutions, whether it's universities, whether it's museums, they have all shown their willingness to go along in the face of genocide, right? To bring in the police, to censor their own people, right? And once you've done that, well, what's a little bit more? Let's take the pronouns off the website. Let's take the word justice out. That's polarizing. Decolonization, do we really need to say that, right? So this huge precedent has been set. And this is where, it's interesting that Trump, one of his first big international fights was with Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, because Gustavo Petro saw this coming 16 months ago. He said in October that what is happening in Gaza is the future for the poor of the world, that this was a kind of a practice run for a sort of globalized genocidal practice. And when he saw migrants being shackled, in ways that echo the shackling of Palestinians in Gaza, he said, okay, it's happening. And he stood up. And I think what connects this, the ideology at the center, the theory of power at the center of the Trump administration is, I'm sorry, but I still listen to Steve Bannon. I started with my research for Doppelganger, and I keep listening. So I was listening to him this morning, and he was talking all about power through peace through strength, right? Mm-hmm. And that everything they're doing is about deterrence, right?
So Naomi Klein is so funny. So Naomi Klein's book Doppelganger is basically about the other Naomi. Is the other woman's name Naomi Klein too? Like there's another Naomi that I think she's the one with the boobs. And this Naomi Klein, who is a socialist, was getting confused with like the other Naomi Klein, who is not a socialist at all. And so the whole premise of this Naomi Klein's book was that she realized she had a doppelganger on the right, and so she started listening to like all this right-wing media, and she started. Is it Naomi Wolf? Well, but isn't there? I mean, maybe that is. I don't know. But like, so the whole premise of it was she started listening to the right in the same way that we listen to the left. And it's so funny to me to hear her talk about this, because she's like, I still listen to Steve Bannon, and here's what they're talking about, guys. It's just like she got sucked into right-wing media in the same way that I got sucked into socialist media. And I just think that that's funny. You know what? Maybe I should reach out to Naomi Klein, because like that would actually be a kind of interesting conversation to have. Maybe I should be like, hey, Naomi, I've been watching you guys in the same way that you've been watching Steve Bannon for like a while, and maybe we should have a conversation, because I just think that would be an interesting conversation to have, like as two people peering into the echo chambers that we're not a part of. Maybe it could be an interesting dialogue. Maybe I will. Who knows?
To go in really, really strong and send fear through the world, right? So we understand that from a military perspective, right? What that means, you have to look like you're willing to do anything. But it also applies to speech, right? It also applies to all these ways that they're picking very high profile targets. Rula is very, very high profile in Italy and around the world. And to pick that fight is a message to journalists with way less power and profile of we will stop at no one, right? So this is like peace through deterrence is just another word for, maximum bullying.
So, Rula, if you could respond to that, this very sinister quote, fear through the world, spreading fear through the world, this what Bannon has indicated. And I mean, in particular, it's journalism in general, in whatever form, but especially in your case, and we've seen it more times than one can count in the case of Gaza, on social media, because after all, you, Rula, were singled out because of tweets, comments that you made on social media. So if you could talk about, and then Naomi, I want you to talk about this as well, since you've written an entire book on the kind of sinister and extremely powerful effects of things that occur on social media. But Rula, if you could say how you think this form, in a sense, more universal, ubiquitous, accessible than traditional media, what impact that has had, and the shutting down of speech on social media, and the fact that now a billionaire controls one of the biggest platforms.
I think that's a great point, Narmeen. They control actually all platforms. I mean,
yes, exactly. In fact, and they were all there at Trump's inauguration.
Standing behind Trump, where like control of our communication. I realized the power of social media when I was reporting about the Arab Spring.
They control our communication. Do you guys hear that? They control our communication.
Billionaire controls one of the biggest platforms.
I think that's a great point, Narmeen. They control actually all platforms. I mean,
yes, exactly. In fact, and they were all there at Trump's
all
inauguration.
standing behind Trump, where like control of our communication. I realize the power of social media.
You know, it's almost like they think that they should be the ones in control of it, and they're just a little bit pissed off about not being in control of it anymore. They had no problem when they were in control of it. There was no, they were banning everyone left and right. Like you could get banned for saying learn to code, stuff like that. They had no problem with that. But man, now that they don't control it anymore, they're a little bit pissed off at it.
When I was reporting about the Arab Spring, because Arabs and especially Egyptian and others could not access traditional media because it was dominated and controlled by the regime. So they had to use social media, and this is how they amplify the messages of, for the resistance. And I think the power was understood by Arab tyrants first, and then by the rest. Meloni understood it very well. Steve Bannon actually, when he was fired by Trump the first time, he went to Italy and he identified Meloni. He said, we need to select people like her, normal people, normal faces, and basically have that face, presentable face behind our kind of ideas. And she understood communication very well.
Yeah, Sam, you're making a great point here. The biggest black pill is realizing that free speech is always the mantra, whichever side disadvantaged at the point uses, and they immediately throw it to the side the second they gain power. I mean, ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Like, I got involved on in so-called MAGA movement in 2020 because they were the ones that purported to be in favor of free speech. I was seeing all this social justice shit online. I didn't like it. And so I went to the side that said they were in favor of free speech, said they were anti-censorship. And now look what's happened. They're the ones calling for censoring. They're the ones calling for banning. They're much worse than the right now. And they're much worse than the left now. Not that I'm joining the left because I think the left is crazy for different reasons. But it's just it's incredibly blackpilling to know, oh, yeah, I spent all this time trying to support you and you never really believed any of that? Oh, okay. Well, stupid me. I was naive. Sorry.
Better than all of the others, even better than Berlusconi almost. And she weaponized it, kept drilling and repeating the same lie over and over and again.
Laura, are you going to make me get up early tomorrow? Oh. Maybe we'll watch it on replay. I don't want to get up early tomorrow. I don't want to. Thanks for letting me know that, Laura. I do want to do more coverage of congressional hearings and stuff like that. I kind of have this idea of doing a show called Laughing at Politics where we talk about congressional hearings and just watch them and laugh at them. But thank you for letting me know.
And then instead of whoever would challenge the lie, she would smear them on a personal level in any kind of way. And for her, I was an easy target. It's not a coincidence that she and her followers keep calling me Palestinian. For them, I'm Palestinian. It doesn't matter my Italian citizenship.
Are Palestinian.
I am Palestinian, meaning she's one of those. We are, we're the other side. It's us versus them. She's them. And I think it sent a really clear signal. But I saw also how she reached out to Elon Musk, immediately opened the doors for Elon Musk, invited him. I mean, you could see this alliance of international fascists aiding and abetting each other.
Yeah, I don't mean to distract from this presentation, but Bernie Sanders screaming at RFK Jr., "Do you disavow this onesie?" It's the funniest shit. That will never know. Do you disavow this onesie, sir? There will never be a time when that's just not the most hilarious thing that Bernie has ever said in his life.
They're using and abusing, using each other, exploiting each other, and then weaponize the same strategy against anybody that dares to criticize them. I am lucky enough, I live in the United States, but I mean, I have colleagues who live under police protection. Saviano, for example, was clearly, sued and bullied. And then Meloni said, he doesn't really need police protections. It reminds me of what Trump did when he took police protections from whether critics or other people who need really police protection. But also I remember something else, somebody that didn't even talk about Meloni, but he talked about the fascist groups in Italy. He was also under police protection. His name is Paolo. He's a brilliant colleague from Repubblica, and he was, reporting about the organizations
funded by USA
and what they're doing. And she basically went on Twitter 5 years ago and she said, well, he is now playing victim. He really doesn't need police protection. The guy lived 24/7 under police protection because fascists wants him killed. They send him death threats. So I really realized earlier on her tactic. She's no different than what, the fascist movement in the 30s and 40s did in Italy. This is exactly what they did. Any journalist that would contradict them or expose their lies and corruption will end up being threatened or killed or tortured. She doesn't have those means, but she can excite and incite her base. And my answer to her was very clear to me that I would not put up with it. I know it was, time consuming and also very expensive, but I understood that I had to hold the line because I realized that, luckily I'm in my 50s, but I'm thinking about the journalists who just started their career, how they don't have any of the protections or the privilege. So I basically said, I'm not going to be intimidated. And I was very shocked when yesterday, when she announced that she was under criminal investigation, she used the same words, like, I'm not going to be intimidated by these judges. She's basically waging a war on the judges now because she is under criminal investigation. And I thought, oh my God, she's using the same exact words that I used 2 years ago when I said, I'm not going to be intimidated. We will see you in the court, And then I realized that many colleagues were texting me privately, like, we wish we could do that, but we work in the Italian television, public television, that is dominated directly by the government. And she was single-handedly with her people censoring speeches, including, speeches about the liberation of Italy. Last year, there was this comedian and artist that wanted to read a monologue on national television about what the liberation of Italy from the fascist regime meant. She censored him, personally called to censor him. And then I realized, like, for them, dominating the narrative, controlling the narrative is the main weapon. And how can they stay in power? But the other tool and the other weapon is propaganda. And I think in this kind of war, there's two aspects. It's not only we have to debunk the propaganda, we have to tell the truth on the other side while standing up to these fascists. But we're not going to be doing it alone. If the journalists in Italy see that there's an international solidarity movement, I think they might be less intimidated. It's not one case, it's not one journalist that can stand up alone to Meloni. It has to be a body, it has to be a coalition of journalists. And I think we need to start now, because this is not going to stop in Italy. This is coming to America. It's already here in America. It's coming to Canada. This is the Western world that is, going to fight these fascists within.
Yeah, I just want to pipe in, if it's okay, Nermeen, just to say, it's important to note that this strategy of Meloni's was pretty successful, right? She went after a few high-profile targets and made it clear, like, if you call her a fascist, if you dwell on the roots of her party with Mussolini, which are very direct, then she could come after you. And I think that we saw this kind of pinkwashing campaign with her, right? Or pastel washing, where, when she first became prime minister, there was a lot of alarm about what this meant in terms of Italy, and there was some pretty tough coverage. But she's really expert at PR, and there was a combination of that sort of going after journalists in this very clear way, which is a very clear threat, and this PR campaign where you see her sort of cuddling with Justin Trudeau and Rishi Sunak, and could she really be so bad? And maybe we were wrong about her. And it was really normalized over a period of several years. And now, I think that is what has laid the groundwork for Elon Musk visiting, with the AFD and the resurgence of these neo-fascist movements in Germany itself. And now, now that Trump is in power and Musk is in power, we're really seeing who Giorgia Meloni is. And I think we're going to see a lot of this, like some of these people who have managed to soften their image a little bit internationally, like Modi, like Meloni, who do go after journalists very, very aggressively, and critics, and send their trolls after them, as Rula has been describing, now feel much safer with Trump in power, and the fangs are out. So it's a new era, and only the kind of solidarity that Rula has been describing about what this is going to be required of journalists internationally has any chance against this coalition or a coagulation internationally.
May I add, Naomi, you're spot on. I remember the day after Trump won the elections, one of Meloni's trolls on social media wrote something. It was like, we've been validated. Our guy won in America. And it was incredible where he said, now it's an open war, an open season against anybody that stand in the way of, implementing our ideology and our strategy. And I thought, they're not even hiding what they want to do. They're not even hiding. And it was incredible to see the president of the Italian parliament, who had the Mussolini statue in his own home, and then said that they are the heirs of Mussolini. When he was interviewed by journalists, he basically on video not only threatened them, bullied them, and he was interviewed about the fact that his own son was accused of rape. They asked him, and he said, my son is innocent, and this is a witch hunt, and all of the above. And then he went after the journalist, and basically, I never seen anything like this, not even under dictatorship, where he almost assaulted the journalist verbally. And it was incredible to see this scene of violence, and it's happening in Italy at a pace. And I lived in Italy for 30 years, and on and off, but it's happening now. It's the acceleration of this with social media, with Elon Musk, with Donald Trump, with Peter Thiel, with Jeff Bezos, at a pace that I think it's going to lead to high-profile people getting killed. The war in Gaza and the killing of journalists in Gaza will not stop in Gaza. I think this is an era we will see other journalists getting killed. I remember the first mandate of Donald Trump, where people from the Maryland Gazette were killed by a deranged guy who was a Trump supporter. I think this time it's going to be even more sinister. I think we will see direct killing of journalists.
The talking point of the left is that Trump is literally going to get journalists killed. This is what they're going with? Really?
Gaza and the killing of journalists in Gaza will not stop in Gaza. I think this is an era we will see other journalists getting killed. I remember the first mandate of Donald Trump, where people from the Maryland Gazette were killed by a deranged guy who was a Trump supporter. I think this time it's going to be even more sinister. I think we will see direct killing of journalists across the board, to send even a more sinister. If they cannot silence us with the courts.
Well, let's not forget Putin. Yeah.
Oh, Putin too. Okay.
Oh, let's not forget what Putin has been doing as well. With the targeting of journalists and regimes like Saudi Arabia. Egypt. It's striking that the only people who haven't gotten their aid cut off, obviously, are Israel, but also Egypt, which is also accelerating its attacks on human rights defenders. I just covered this on Democracy Now! Nermeen. So it's really a club, and they're all emboldening one another.
Yes, it's incredible.
If I could get Naomi, I'd just like you to comment on the particular, you hinted at it earlier, this extraordinarily, I would say, unprecedented moment where we have Musk in government. It's not even that there was this proximity. He bought, Twitter, now X. but now he's actually within the Trump administration. Rula, you spoke about the need for, which is indisputable, international solidarity in the wake of these systematic, increasing, widespread attacks on journalism, indeed on the truth. One would think of social media as a possible site for for this international solidarity, but also, given present conditions, it's dissolution. Yeah. So Naomi, you who've written so much on social media in the subtle ways in which you do in Doppelganger, if you could, I don't know, talk about some of your concerns and what possibilities you think exist or now actually are absolutely foreclosed. Go ahead.
I mean, what I would say is we need, and this is something, you know, our friend Arundhati Roy has been warning us about for a long time from her experience in Modi's India and the way he has gone after journalists, academics, but also just shut down the internet at will in Kashmir, of like, we cannot be dependent either on states or on oligarchs in order to activate our own networks. And we have become far too reliant on these corporate-owned platforms to do our organizing, to build our networks. So we need to build in redundancies that are a little bit more protected, right? And they do need to be redundancies because it can't just be one way of communicating with each other. You know, we need multiple ways of finding one another in order to organize as this gets worse. I mean, personally, I'm not using X anymore. But I also think I've been a little ambivalent as I sort of migrated my social media over to Blue Sky, where I also just want to use it less, you know, like even if it's a better platform, I think we need more in-person organizing. We need more sort of old-fashioned finding each other, writing to each other. We need ways of having discussions that are not constrained by the little prompts of these platforms, where we're not just having a series of takes and takedowns, but really a give and take and building on one another's arguments. And these platforms, I think, have programmed us in ways.
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if social media actually worked that way? Not progressives like Naomi Klein. Okay, so people might be confused about this because Naomi Klein keeps saying she's a progressive. Naomi Klein is not a progressive. Naomi Klein is a socialist. Naomi Klein is saying she's a progressive to make it seem as though she has moderate views. Naomi Klein is a socialist. Naomi Klein is a regular keynote at the Socialism conference. Haymarket Books is Naomi Klein's book publisher. Like, she is not a progressive, she is a socialist. But Blue Sky does represent like a fascinating look into the far left worldview. Honestly, I think it's actually pretty great. Because it's like its own little universe, and I recommend people go on there and see what they're saying. I'm not saying participate with them. I'm not saying antagonize them. I'm just saying go and see what they're saying because it's interesting. I don't know.
Ways where we've lost the ability to disagree productively, get somewhere else than where we started.
Yes, Naomi, I too agree that we have lost the ability to disagree productively. I'm like this close to reaching out to Naomi Klein and be like, do you want to have a conversation? Can we have a conversation, please? Like, can we just do that? That would be great. Naomi, I agree with you that we have lost the ability to disagree productively. Can we have a conversation where we disagree productively?
So I think we need to maybe treat some of the ways in which these platforms have revealed themselves to be what they always were, which are the playthings of rich boys, and not just look for another platform where we can, avoid the real world, if you will. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. But we also need to really support independent media. So I will give a plug for democracy.
No. You're not following. No. I have my own publishing company. I'm not going through anyone else anymore. No. Haymarket Books is a hardcore socialist book publisher. So that really wouldn't make much sense. So no, they will not be publishing my book. I will be publishing my book, and I will be publishing all future books going forward, and everyone else can back off.
Democracy Now!, for Haymarket, the platform that we're on. Yes for Blue Sky, yes for Zateo, yes for all the ways that people are building other platforms so that we're not and we need to defend journalism across the board, but we really need independent media as well, and we need it to be big, and we need to be able to reach people, and need to understand the kind of parasocial relationships that people have with these long form podcasts, right?
True,
where a lot of this is
Naomi.
fascism.
True. I wouldn't say it's fascism,
thrives in
but it's
loneliness, right? This is something that Arendt taught us. There's a reason why things got a lot worse during the pandemic, when so many people were so lonely. And the relationship that people have with these streamers who go live for 3 hours a day is very important for us to understand and unlock, right? That this is company. This is a surrogate friendship. This is really a surrogate social network. And we need to be thinking about how we fill those needs in a real way. And, this leads to all kinds of other issues around the kind of culture that we build on the left, whether it feels welcoming. I think Keeanga Yamada-Taylor talks about the need to build a welcoming left. That's real, right? We haze people. We're really good at kicking people out. It matters that we build a welcoming left, with our real world networks and social networks and media networks and so on. So, I don't know if that answers some of what you're getting at, Nermeen.
Absolutely. So, Rula, if you could just respond to that, and then we have some excellent audience questions coming in, so we'll turn to those after. But Rula, go ahead.
I think Naomi is right. There's a real thirst, especially in the world, for building community, building a coalition. The other side have this coalition, and it's clear how they're aiding and abetting each other. I want just to bring an example to tie to what Naomi said about Egypt. Egypt under Sisi killed an Italian researcher, an academic, Giulio Regeni, murdered him. Basically, the police arrested him. He was tortured for days and days and days. He was butchered. Meloni came to power. She campaigned saying she will seek justice for Regeni. And together with Ursula von der Leyen and others, they went and begged Sisi, gave him billions of dollars so he could block migration from Africa. You see, it's not about protection of Europeans. It's about protection of certain interests. And Meloni is all about that. And I think it's why the coalition is needed on the progressive side. It's not only for the journalists, it's to help to hold the line and protect democracy itself. Meloni was under investigation, criminal investigation, because a very brilliant, lawyer decided that what Meloni did was illegal. So he sued her single-handedly. Somebody from the civil society, an old lawyer in his late 60s. It's like, what she did is criminal. She basically she aided and abetted, the release of human trafficker. So and he sued her, and now she's waging a war in the judiciary. What happens in Italy, in the United States, in the Western world, especially in North America, it's such a dangerous moment and will set a precedent, because I think Duarte and other dictators are watching this moment so they can see where they can rise the bar. What can they get away with? And that coalition has to be an international coalition that stands up and support these journalists everywhere, these critics, these academics everywhere. I mean, it breaks my heart that Columbia University can crack down on academics who are critical of the occupation and illegal occupation. And today we watched, petitions by regular people who are saying, we need to go after any academics that is critical of Israel, call him basically a terrorist. Call him a terrorist. And they're now signing, taking a definition of anti-Semitism and weaponizing it, but also taking a definition of anything that is critical of Israel and, applying on it the rules of the war on terror. So you become a terrorist. You're not anymore only a critic, you're a terrorist. And I think this is such a dangerous moment, and that coalition is needed now more than ever.
Yeah. Because some courage. Because that's the pincer that I was talking about earlier, and that sort of hot war, Cold War dynamic. Yes, exactly. It isn't. People are afraid of being called anti-Semitic if they describe what is actually happening in Gaza. but more than that now. Also be the fear of being classified as providing support for terrorism, and then if you're an international student, being deported. This is, it's ramping up in a huge way. I mean, you asked me about Musk, and I mean, I do think that, when Trump was elected the first time, I called it a corporate coup. Because there were so many, he ran on this pseudo-populist campaign, going to clean out the swamp, and then he filled his cabinet with billionaires, and handed them all kinds of goodies, including massive tax breaks and so on. So it's really a bait and switch. This time it's much more dramatic, and it's important to understand that this isn't really what he ran on, right? In fact, he said he was going to take on big tech. Right. Mm-hmm. And here he has been handing, $500 billion for AI and so on. So I think this is also a pincer move that we have to understand, is that he's serving up billions, hundreds of billions to his friends and his funders, and there's no difference between those two categories. If you give him money, you are his friend. That's all he understands. And so he's lavishing billions on the billionaire class. And in order for that to not outrage his base, he must give them blood, right? So it's like billionaires for the rich and blood for the base. And that's what the sort of sadism of the deportations and the going after journalists is about. That's how he's maintaining the equilibrium. He has to offer these two things simultaneously, or the whole thing falls apart.
Okay, so Naomi, I want to go to, we have some very good audience questions. And the first I'll ask you. You said earlier, with respect to, resistance or whatever, the importance of nonprofit or independent news media, and how they need to be supported. One of the members of the audience asks, how can nonprofit news organizations prepare effectively for the potential impact of HR 9495, the House bill targeting nonprofits? Naomi.
I don't have any secret except for what we've been talking about, which is solidarity. It's been disappointing that in the face of a strategy that is really going after everyone, there hasn't been more of a coordinated response, right? From universities, foundations, nonprofits, more grassroots organizations. Because there is power in that kind of coordination. And I think if the strategy is, well, let's just lay low and...
Paultron, thank you for the super chat. The differences between socialism and fascism are mostly important to socialists and fascists. To an outsider, no. That's not right. Okay. Are moot, control of and profits the means of production? No. That's not the difference. It's not the difference. The only thing that matters, so far as I'm concerned, and so far as I think most people should be concerned, the only thing that matters is private property ownership. The left wants to abolish all private property ownership. Under National Socialism, for example, and I'm not advocating for this, but I'm just saying, I'm not a National Socialist, but I know the difference. National Socialism still had private property ownership. So you might call National Socialism to be the example for fascism, right? They still had private property ownership. So you can critique that system as much as you like, but the only difference that matters between the communist left and the fascist right is that one allows for private property ownership and one does not. That's the only difference that matters. And it's not about the means of production, because the means of production is no longer a thing that, listen, the means of production is not the factories anymore. When the left says the means of production, what they really mean is the nuclear family. The means of production are the people. It's not the factories. So that is the difference. That is the only difference that matters. And no, I wouldn't even offer that, if I'm honest about it. So what do you want instead, Alex? Do you want classical liberalism? What is the alternative? Classical liberalism? Well, that's not going to work either. So listen, can we please, like, we are better than this, guys. And I know that most people don't listen to my channel every day, and I know that most people don't watch this content with me, but some of you do. Enough of you do. Can we please stop with the bullshit talking points? Because every time I hear a bullshit talking point, I literally want to beat my head against the wall. That's how I feel about it. I want to deal in reality. I want to deal in nuance. What we care about is the left wants to take away our ability to own a home. They want to take away our ability to own land. They want to take away our ability to own apartment rentals so we rent out as landlords. They want to take away our ability to own intellectual property. They want to take away our ability to own a private business, whether that private business be big or small. They want to take away your parental rights over your kids. And some of them would argue that your individual liberties are also a point of private property ownership, and they want to take away those too. That is what that means. We need to dispense with this. Well, they want to control the means of production. The means of production means private property ownership. And it does not just mean the factories. It means the family. Under again, National Socialism, and again, I'm not advocating for that system. I'm not a National Socialist at all, but I understand it. People could still own homes. People could still own lands. People could still own businesses. People still had parental rights over your kids. In fact, the government granted incentives to people in terms of home ownership, where if you had 4 kids, you basically got a free fucking house. That's home ownership. That means it's not socialism. It's not the same thing. So, do they think the production more of is reproducing capitalism? They think of it as reproducing, well, they think of it as both, but it's more so reproducing capitalism. All they care about is, have we ever heard, you've watched enough of my content to know, have you ever heard the left do long diatribes about the production of tangible goods? Anyone? They talk about the production of tangible goods sometimes. Have you ever heard the left do presentation after presentation after presentation after presentation about the production of tangible goods? No, you haven't. Because that's not what they're talking about. The greatest trick the fucking communists ever played was convincing people that all they cared about was the means of fucking production. No, they don't. That's what private property ownership means. No, they don't. Please. You just paid me $20 to give you an answer. And now your cognitive dissonance is arguing with the answer because you don't like the answer that I gave you. It is not the same thing.
Hope they go after somebody else or make these compromises. I mean, that is just playing completely, into their hands. So, I actually think this is really just an organizing challenge, and that we can't, one of the things that capitalism does is it pushes us into our individual brands and gets us to think very individualistically. And in the face of this kind of an onslaught, that is just a deadly strategy.
And Rula, if you could speak about that as well, as a journalist who's also an independent journalist based here now in the US. And, a number of questions have come in about how the mainstream media, number one, can be held to account, if at all, in its complicity in the genocide in Gaza, and also whether, given the ceasefire, however tentative, whether you, and Naomi, I'll ask you this as well, whether you see any change in the representation of what's going on in Gaza in mainstream media in the West, American media in particular.
I think mainstream media abdicated its mission, and it's been a while. I mean, with Gaza, I think the mask dropped. I remember CNN asking a politician who was talking, Jayapal, representative who was talking about 15,000 Palestinians killed, and the TV host said, "Well, at least they were not raped." And I thought, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So wait 1 second. So she basically was minimizing the death of 15,000 people in Gaza, including children and women, saying, well, at least they were not raped. Israeli soldiers are not raping them, as if these two things are together. or I remember also Hussam Zumlut interviewed by BBC, and he talked about 7 members of his own family being butchered and killed, including 3 children. And the BBC TV host looked at him and said, well, that's terrible, but can you condemn the killing of Israeli civilians? And I thought, we are dehumanized. We are not human in the eyes of most of our colleagues in the media. I mean, even when I'm invited to CNN, and I know there's a lot of decent people, but I'm invited to watch tunnels, videos of tunnels under Shifa Hospital. After they bombed the Shifa Hospital, said, well, do you believe what the Israelis send us? And I said, my job is not to validate whether Israelis send or not. My job, if somebody tells me it's raining or it's sunny, my job is to open the door and see. And because they're barring us from seeing, I rely on the Palestinian journalists to see, and I believe them, because what they're seeing with their own eyes, I believe my own eyes. And I think they didn't like the answer, and I remember I was invited a couple of times, but it's always to somehow to validate, either to normalize or validate the narrative on the other side, as if the only victims were the other side, as the only truth is the other side. And we have somehow to sometimes put, a couple of Palestinians just to show that we, invited a couple of Palestinians. And it's incredible, because I grew up watching international media. I grew up watching journalists holding accountable politicians, presidents, and they are now abdicating all of that. And this big lie, Hannah Arendt used to say, the perfect subject of authoritarian rule is somebody that cannot anymore distinguish between facts and fictions, truth and lies. The big lie started with WMD, and I think nobody ever was held accountable for that big lie. Thousands of people were killed. Can you imagine how many lies were told about Gaza and how many people paid the price for that?
Yeah,
but the biggest, another thing that happened, it's not only the West lost.
I mean, when I was researching the book about racism, like, one of the things that I just kept asking myself is, like, has the truth ever mattered? Really? Has it ever mattered? People are inventing words for the sake of inventing a narrative, for the sake of, owning their political opponent. And then they're pretending those words are real things. And this has been going on forever. Has the truth literally ever mattered? I kind of think not, honestly. And you know what? We need to be aware of that, because once you acknowledge that the truth matters to no one, the truth doesn't matter to the right, the truth doesn't matter to the left. It doesn't matter. People are only looking for ammunition that they can hurl at people that they don't like for whatever perceived slight that they've committed against them. So what does that mean? Well, number one, if someone is saying something shitty about another person, just don't listen to them. Go talk to the other person. Go listen to the other person. Go judge for yourself. Now, if you walk away thinking that other person is a shitty person, then fine, because there are shitty people in the world. But, like, don't ever listen to what someone else is saying about another person. Go see for yourself. Go do your own research, because probably what you're going to find is the person shit-talking the person is full of shit. That's almost always the case. And so judge for yourself who you like, judge for yourself who you find trustworthy, judge for yourself who you want to listen to, regardless of what anyone else says and does. But the second thing that we need to learn from that is we need to create our own fucking narratives. We need to understand that if we are not out there creating and out there putting a vision for what we want and out there, pushing our own agenda, no one's going to do it for us, because that's all anyone is doing. They're all pushing their own agenda. Now, I'm not arguing for a world in which we are, extreme. I like to think that I put out there a lot of nuance. I put out a lot of context. I put out very level-headed thought. I don't usually take a side. I think both sides suck, even though I am personally very, very, very right-wing. And so I think that it's like one of those things where if everyone else is doing it, we need to be there doing it too. if everyone else is just like throwing the truth out the window, it's not that we necessarily throw the truth out the window, but that we need to be out there saying, here's our perspective. We are not taking your word for anything. Go fuck yourselves. You guys are the ones causing the problems in the first place, because that is basically the narrative that we have, isn't it? It's like looking at both sides and going, you know what? You're both the fucking problem. Both of you. And here's why you're the problem. And here's examples of how you're the problem. And here's what we intend to do about it. And you know, I do try to hold like myself to a higher standard of saying, there is a higher standard of truth and evidence. It is primary sources, and that is what I look at. I do not take anyone's word for it if there is not primary source evidence. And I would really encourage people to do the same. And where that gets really difficult is when someone is saying something that you like, that you want to jump on the bandwagon of, but that you don't have the evidence to support it, right? You need to look for primary source evidence, regardless of if it's an opinion you like or an opinion that you don't. Because if you're just taking someone's word for it, well, that person has a political agenda. That person is pushing a specific narrative. Does that person have your best interest at heart? Probably not. Has that person even looked at primary source evidence themselves? Probably not. Do you know how many millions less people would be fooled by James Lindsay's con job if they just looked at primary source evidence? But no, James Lindsay's run around the country for years going, it's a Gnostic cult, guys. It is a battle of good versus evil, and you are on the side of good. And therefore, we have to go into battle against the evil Gnostic cult. He's lied to millions of people, and they just bought into it because it was what they wanted to hear, and they didn't bother to look at the actual fucking evidence, which says that James is wrong. So don't get caught up in that. Hold yourself to a higher standard. People think I'm too mean to people in my chat. No, I hold my chat to a higher standard. We don't allow political talking points. We don't allow your fucking narrative that makes you feel good. If you are wrong, I'm going to tell you that you are wrong, and then I'm going to show you evidence that you are wrong, or I'm going to point you to where the evidence exists, because you need to hinge back into reality. If we aren't going to do this, no one else is going to do it.
Credibility in the eyes of the global south and the rest of the world. Journalists in the West lost any credibility. And I don't think they realize how bad it is, because they're never going to be believed ever again after the 40 beheaded babies and after so many lies were told to normalize genocide. To normalize the worst genocidal campaign I ever seen in my lifetime.
Naomi.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. I don't know what else I can add to that. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to, and this may be a good note on which to conclude, only because, well, I mean, there are many very powerful points that have been made in the course of this conversation. But I think this is an interesting question. This person asks what each of you make of the way in which the far right is always representing itself as underdogs, or as they are the ones who are persecuted. So how can we counter, as a journalist, question, or people even outside journalism, how do you counter this constant use of weaponized aggrievement? Naomi, if you want to begin.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking a lot about it, the Israel playbook, and there's nobody better at that than Israel. But it is true that it's also part of a fascist playbook, right? And I think that it's important to understand that people who use it are not necessarily lying, in the sense that they may well feel themselves to be victims. They may well feel that sense of victimization may well be absolutely formative to their sense of self. And I think that that's true for many Israeli leaders, right? But it's always been part of part of understanding how, in the interwar period for Germany, that sense of aggrievement from sanctions and hardship, this is the soil in which fascism always spreads. But I think we'll have to be very vigilant and alert to it, because, and when I listen to MAGA media, despite controlling, every part of the government and the courts, they are still acting like they're the underdogs, that they're being persecuted. So even when they are, forced to back down on a obviously illegal order, they still act as if this is a vast conspiracy. This is the deep state. So we have to understand the playbook. It's a huge part of it. I don't think the way to respond to it is for us to be leaning into feeling like victims. I actually think that our role right now on the left is to help people feel that they have some power, that they have some agency, that there is strength, right, when we come together. Because I think if we accept that we are just totally weak, that they will always win, that there is no point, then we may as well just roll over, right? So we have to find our collective strength in this moment. It's a moment that calls for courage. And we're seeing some examples, some extraordinary examples of it already, and we need to see a lot more.
So before I go to Rula and Naomi, give us some of the examples that you most admire or that you think should be replicated.
Well, I think about educators who protect.
Well, this is a good point, Bob. Bob says finding the truth is difficult in this moment. The level, reach, and sophistication and effectiveness of propaganda is unprecedented due to technology. Well, but do you know what the antidote to that is, Bob? It's also technology. Use AI. Now, AI is not perfect. Of course, AI is not perfect. And there are absolutely some AIs that are woke. Okay, fine. But if you have a question about something, just ask AI to find it for you. Where can I find a video of so-and-so discussing such and such? You don't even have to ask the AI, is this, like, so-and-so says such and such, is this true? You could start there maybe, but then ask, where is a video of this person discussing this? Where can I learn more information about this? What is a reputable, unbiased source? And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't, but, people have got to start getting used to using AI. Like, I've talked about this. I used AI to research extensively for my book that I just finished, A Brief History of Racism. It made it so much easier. And then I got to go back and every time I finished a chapter, I would put it into the AI and say, is everything in this chapter historically accurate? If it's not, tell me what I missed, essentially. And sometimes the AI would be like, yeah, you did a really good job. And sometimes the AI would be like, you need to clarify this a little bit. Sometimes the AI would give me a leftist talking point and I'd just basically ignore it because it didn't actually answer the question that I asked. So use AI. Use it extensively. Use it for everything you can. And by the way, AI learns from us. So if people are saying AI is woke, AI is woke, AI is woke, well, then chances are that a lot of woke people are using it. Do you know how you can counterbalance that? By you using it yourself. I have all of my stuff from my Substack loaded into AI, so the AI has read it. And I've seen, because I've used it to research different topics, it actually does, it understands this stuff more than most normal people do in regards to the leftist stuff. So it's an incredible tool, and use it as much as you can and get used to it because it ain't going nowhere. And that would be my recommendation if people have questions about the truth. And I would say that even when you're watching stuff that you like, again, make sure you're fact checking everything. Look at primary sources.
Their kids from ICE. I think about communities coming together, workers protecting their co-workers. But I also think look to South Korea and the fact, thinking about what Rula just said about WMDs and remembering that chapter opening and the way impunity spreads, right? I think we see this with Israel. When you keep getting away with it, you up the ante. And that is not only true of Israel, it's true of the United States. So having a vision collectively of accountability for the kinds of crimes that we're seeing is, I think, very important, because impunity, it's like an oil spill. It doesn't stay in place. It spreads into everything. And I think that that's the moment that we're in.
So Rula, if you could just respond to the initial question from the audience member about the far right seeing themselves as underdogs, victims, and the weaponization of this sense of aggrievement. And then, maybe a good note to end on, like Naomi just did, what is the way forward in terms of resistance, in terms of solidarity, what the means of that solidarity could be?
I think the far right used this as a perfect tactic to, garner popularity and power. And they always used it since World War I on. It's incredible. I mean, I was watching Meloni's video appear, like she's the most powerful woman in Italy, controls everything, dominates everything. And yesterday it's like, oh my God, I got this. I'm under criminal investigation because of, and the judiciary are coming after me and the journalists are coming after me. It's like, she controls everything in Italy. The judge had no choice but to open this because she aided and abetted a war criminal escape on a private jet. And I thought, wow, the audacity. But then it's just part of their playbook. But again, I think the answer to this, accountability, because once you appear and tell the people, and I'm so glad that the judge actually went and he said, this is the case. This is what we have in front of us. Just open the windows, let the light come in through the, telling the facts, the truth. And this applies to Gaza, and this applies to Palestine, this applies to the United States. I think we really need to activate all these mechanisms internationally and create a coalition that can support these kind of initiatives. I am very, I was talking about Hind Rajab, the 6-year-old that was murdered in Gaza. Immediately after, Palestinians start galvanizing. They organized this initiative with those lawyers in Belgium, and they created the Hind Rajab Foundation that start collecting war crime evidence. And now the only thing that in Israel everybody talks about, it's like about the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, these initiatives worldwide wherever, if you ever committed, any war crime, you will be held accountable. Accountability and the truth is the only, I think, medium we have today to hold the line. And these initiatives are so important. Tomorrow, for example, at the ICC, there will be this huge conference. And the conference was triggered by countries, especially in the global south, in how to hold the global north accountable for complicity with genocide. And not only countries who sell weapons, but also the media that sell the narrative about, that basically sanitized this genocide and sold the narrative.
Global north means effectively the capitalist countries. Global south mean effectively like the oppressed countries. Or I guess global north would be the oppressor countries. Global south means the oppressed countries. So they're not necessarily talking about northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. They're saying oppressor versus oppressed for people who haven't heard those terms before.
And basically prepare the ground, the ground for the genocide to take place. And many times when I was listening to certain individuals in the media, I thought, this is Radio Rwanda. These people were held accountable for inciting and spewing basically propaganda that paved the way for the genocide of Rwanda to take place. We need that mechanism also for the media. Why? Because nobody paid any price for the lie that killed hundreds of thousands of Iraqis. And if we continue this way, it's not only nobody will pay any price, or there will be no accountability for the 70,000 people who are murdered and slaughtered in Gaza, but this will be used as a doctrine to go after everybody else globally. We need to hold the line, and we need accountability, not only against governments, but against ourselves, because the floodgates are now open. And I really believe that this is about our collective survival as journalists, as citizens. And I think in the end, and I really continue to think about a woman I interviewed from Gaza, and she had with her 4 children, and I kept interviewing her and with WhatsApp, and I heard the kids crying, especially one, and we did small video, and I said, oh my God, he's so cute. And she said, and I said, but I could see that he was clinging to that woman, and he couldn't leave her dress. And she said, he's not my child. I found him. I don't know, I found him and I carried him with me. And I keep thinking about these women who, are raising children who are left. There's 39,000 orphans in Gaza. And I think if there's going to be any justice for these children, or there's ever going to be any justice at all, it has to start by exposing the lies, telling the truth, holding accountable the war criminals, but also who facilitated for this big crime to take place in our lifetime.
Thank you so much, Rula. That's an extremely powerful note on which to end.
right.
That brings to a close our...
Well, that was a little uneventful for me, if I'm honest about it. But, you know, you never quite know with Haymarket Books whether or not it's going to be eventful. The big takeaways are they think that Trump is literally going to get journalists killed. And the other big takeaway is maybe I should just send Naomi Klein an email and be like, Naomi, I know you're a leftist that looked into the echo chamber of the right. I am a former leftist who is now basically a fascist who examines the echo chamber of the left. Do you want to have a conversation about that? Because I think that we could actually have a really interesting conversation. And I too want to be able to productively disagree with people, because I don't hate you, Naomi. Just because you're a socialist, I don't hate you. I don't hate you at all. I think your ideas are crazy. I think they're really, really bad. But maybe we could have a conversation about the perspective of, like, what do you actually think about the right, Naomi? Like, I should ask her that. Like, what do you actually think about, like, what do you think of Steve Bannon? How, like, what other characters have you encountered on the right? What is your perception of them? And maybe she can ask me, Carlin, what do you think about Sophie Lewis? I could be like, Sophie is the best, Naomi. I have no complaints about Sophie. Sophie just needs to keep on being Sophie, and that's all we need from her. I don't even want to change her. I don't even want Sophie to not be a communist. She's too great as a communist. So maybe that conversation can happen. I don't know. Maybe that will happen. But guys, that is all I have for right now. We are going to be doing Disenraged tonight. We are going to be talking about near-death experiences at 9 p.m. So if you've never been to an episode of Disenraged, come on back. It's a little show that Jennifer and I do on Tuesday nights, and it's fun. And we're going to be talking about near-death experiences. And as a reminder, I am on the verge, and it may even happen in the next couple hours. I am on the verge of sending out to the members of the Red Menace Collective the completed PDF of A Brief History of Racism, which is my new book that is going to be publicly available next week, but it will be available now or within the next 24 hours to the members of the Red Menace Collective, who are people who are joined at redmenacecollective.substack.com. This is how I am funding my books moving forward, my ability to write the books, research the books, do all that stuff. It's basically like getting an advance from a publisher. And except I don't get an advance from a publisher because I am now the publisher. I get an advance from you guys. And in return for that advance, and in return for you entrusting me, I give you draft chapters of the book as I'm writing them, so you don't actually have to wait until the book is published. You can see the content as it's being written and as it's being creative. You also get a free digital copy of the books when they are completed as my thank you for allowing me to do this. Occasionally there's some other stuff that might happen too, but those are the two big perks over on redmenacecollective.substack.com. And I really can't wait for you guys to read the book. I am looking forward to you reading the book. I think you're really going to like it. And that is all we have for today. That is all we have for today. So I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We will be doing Disenraged at 9 p.m. tonight. And yeah, I guess that is all I have. Hang on. Annie, are you talking about the Discord? To get to the Discord, you have to be a member on my other Substack. So this is a little bit confusing for new people. I have more than one Substack, okay? These are two different fees. The Red Menace Collective is very specific to book publishing, okay? So that the only thing that the Red Menace Collective covers is the book publishing piece. It is completely separate from my main Substack, which is carlin.substack.com. This Substack is $8 a month or $80 a year. This is how I fund my journalism. It's how I fund my streaming. It's how I fund the ability to do what I do. You get different perks on this Substack than you do on the Red Menace Collective. On this one, you get access to the supporter Discord. You get access to the community Zooms. You get access to Spy Stream. Oh, God! Spy Stream starts tomorrow. You guys aren't going to want to miss Spy Stream. Spy Stream is going to be crazy. I don't know exactly what time we're going to start watching it yet, but you'll find out if you sign up for the main Substack. Anyway, If you want to join the supporter Discord, go to the Digest newsletter. The Digest newsletter comes out every week on Sunday. What you need to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom, and underneath this red box for paying supporters only, you will find access to the supporter Discord. So that is always where you go for the supporter Discord. That is always where you go for the community Zoom links and stuff like that. And again, that is separate from my other thing. You got to think of them like two different products. Both of them support me, but they're two different products. So, you know, that's just the way it goes. Anyway, that is all I have for tonight. I'm going to go grab some dinner before Disenrage, and I will see you guys soon. Have a good one. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Would you give me some idea?
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.